This week on Arizona Illustrated, a day trip to nearly every desert in the world, breathing life into Tucson one drawing at a time, understanding the importance of play, and remembering politicians working together from the vault. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. Imagine a place where one can stroll beneath towering eucalyptus trees, alongside peaceful, shimmering brooks, through fields of flowers full of singing birds, and surrounded by otherworldly-looking cactus. Now imagine this visit is just a day trip from Phoenix and Tucson. No need to imagine, this is Boyce Thompson Arboretum.
My name is Mark Sigworth. I'm the Executive Director of Boyce Thompson Arboretum State Park. Well, I think one of the unique things about us is we were established in 1924. So we're actually a very old garden, and so therefore we have a lot of mature specimens. One of the things I learned here is if a plant is really neat, it tends to be slow growing, and if it's slow growing, it tends to be expensive. So we have a lot of neat plants here.
This area is called Boojum Cove. We have planted about 23 boojums of all different sizes so far. Boojums, I don't know if most people realize this, they are actually related to the ocotillo that is native to the Sonoran Desert. There are about 9 species of plants in that family, and boojum is one of those, and it's one of the ones that is actually considered a succulent. Ocotillos are woody shrubs, not succulents as a lot of people think. As you can see, it's quite stunning back here. It's got a natural topography, and we are busy planting all kinds of plants from the Baja area. We have 2 palm species. We have the Mexican blue palm, Hesper palm, I think some people call it, which is the Brahia armata, and the Washingtonia robusta, which is the California fan palm.
What we try to do is we try not to hit you over the head with all the Latin names. We try to recreate different scenes from around the world. So when you actually go to our Australian area, you might think that you're in Australia. If you go to our South American area, you might think that you're in South America. Our Chihuahuan desert is very nice, and of course that would be more of your New Mexico, Texas type of desert.
The Chihuahua Desert is one of the 3 main deserts in the Southwest. The Chihuahua Desert receives most of its rain in the summertime. Sonoran is characterized by 2 wet seasons, one in the summer, our summer monsoons, and then a winter rainfall period. And then the Mojave receives most of their rain in the wintertime. One of the plants that you see a lot is a Texas Ranger, the leucophyllum. That plant is very interesting. It's got real nice silver foliage, different colors of flowers, white, lavender, and purple. And it's interesting because it's kind of called a barometer plant. The minute the pressure changes due to incoming rain, it'll burst into bloom. If you actually receive the rain, then you really get a spectacular flower show. Prickly pears are interesting because they form these pads, and you get, of course, the colorful fruit that is edible on many species. I think it's becoming more popular. I've seen a lot of articles on how nutritious the fruit is, and even the pads on some of the species are edible. You can slice them up, and they're actually quite tasty. Sometimes they pickle them, people roast them, and you can put them in your meals.
William Boyce Thompson, who we affectionately refer to as a colonel, built this house in 1924 as his winter home. He first saw this canyon when he came to inspect the mine he had purchased, which was a magma mine in the town of Superior. And he just fell in love with this area and the views. And he really didn't know what kind of trees to plant here in Arizona. So he went down to the University of Arizona and asked their head of plant sciences what he thought. Dr. Kreider, our first director, said, why don't you plant all 400 acres and create an arboretum? And I think the colonel thought that was a very good idea. He then went down to the Carnegie Desert Research Lab at Tucson Hill, and he asked them what work was being done in the desert. And actually very little research was being done on the arid lands of the world. And so he kind of put that together that this would be a great place to do that kind of research. So we started out in '24. We incorporated as a nonprofit in 1928. Really Arizona's first nonprofit, first research organization dedicated to the study of arid land plants of the world. We became a desert biology center with the U of A back in 1965, and then State Parks became our third partner in 1977. So we're not only part of the University of Arizona, part of the Arizona State Park system, but we're still established by our founding nonprofit in 1928. So this is actually a great place to grow plants from around the world, and that's one of the reasons the colonel chose it, because of the topography here, we have all these little microclimates, and so we can kind of look at a plant and see how it would grow best and actually find the place at the Arboretum where it would grow best. The garden changes every day. Every day I walk out there, there's a different flower, a different tree looking better than it did the day before, a different type of bird or lizard or snake. It's always a fascinating walk here. I just don't know what I'm going to find, but I know I'll find something special.
For more on Boyce Thompson Arboretum, visit our webpage at azpm.org. On any given day while passing through town, you might come upon a man crouched on a street corner, clutching what looks to be a clipboard. He occasionally lifts a pencil, gazes toward one of Tucson's more aged and possibly iconic structures, then returns his focus to the work at hand. Well, you've just caught sketch artist Danny Martin at work, capturing yet another side of his favorite subject, Tucson.
Like a lot of people that do art, it started with drawing. I think most people that go into art start off because they were the weird kid who drew a lot. And I just never really grew out of being the weird person who drew a lot. My name is Danny Martin. I teach screen printing at Pima West. I moved out here 10 years ago to attend the University of Arizona. I got my master's in printmaking. I came from Alabama. I definitely consider Tucson my home. Well, I do like to draw every single day. Not just draw, but actually go out in public and draw. Just being in my environment and working, it's definitely the happiest that I ever am, is when I'm making objects.
Out here today drawing the Paul Bunyan statue, which is definitely a local icon. I'm working on my ongoing project, which is called Tucson Sketchbook, sometimes called Tucson Sketchbook Project. Doesn't really matter. I'm about 50 drawings in.
It's not random that I chose the buildings. The order in which I do them is somewhat random. It's mainly been older buildings, I would say. It's been mainly downtown buildings. A structure gets bumped up the list if it's something I think has a shorter shelf life. If it's like a business I think will be closing down, or a building that will be knocked down. The grill is always invoked as the linchpin, as the real jumping the shark moment that the downtown changed. It's the closure of the grill. It was an important meeting place for downtown culture. And it's not only that it's not there, but it literally burned down. For me, it did motivate me to not just complain or not just talk or reminisce, but to actively, at least for me, feel like I'm engaging in the dialogue of what Tucson is. All of these are done on the spot. It's really important for me to draw these on spot, because otherwise I'm kind of looking through someone else's filter. I really feel connected with the place while I'm drawing it. It actually makes it like I am a photographer or something like that, because I'm dictating how I see the place completely. So this is a
an excuse to go all over town. Go all over town, talk to people, hang out, be outside, rather than just being inside or at a cafe looking at my iPhone, which I will be doing. Except now I'll be able to look at my Instagram, but oh yeah, I actually did do something part of my day. I drew the taco borracho stand that was on 4th Avenue. I really liked that stand, but the owner passed away, and I drew it, and probably about 2 weeks afterwards it was just hauled off, and no one really knows where it was taken. There was an old fruit stand on 6th Avenue and Speedway that recently had to close down, and the couple had been there, I believe they said, since 1966. I didn't really do any documentation to where, even if I wanted to work from photos, like I couldn't because I didn't take any documentation. But that's probably my number one, because it was, again, just like a small mom and pop business that very much just didn't quite fit in with the current cultural shift that's happening.
That thing always stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of iconic, you know? Yeah, that's what I got so far. Hopefully it'll come into shape when I'm done.
Oh, it's there already. It looks great. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well,
nice
Danny.
I'm Doug.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah,
Doug.
nice to meet you too. Thank you. Nice to have you.
My parents are very, very supportive, and I feel very fortunate there was never any pressure to have a real career or a real job. And the only negative of that is the struggle to completely making up and figuring out how to make it work financially, which is another reason why I love Tucson, because I'm actually able to afford being a artist here. It's not that I'm making that much money, but that's a really supportive community that is very affordable and has affordable resources. I'm not thinking about anything else. Bills I gotta pay, my next job I gotta do, even the next thing I'm gonna draw. I'm sure deeper reasons than I'm aware of, that make me want to draw, but for me it's definitely my language. It's definitely my best foot forward as a human being, I know that. I'm 34, and years, you only have so many of them, obviously, and not just having them, but really being able to be yourself. What I mean is completely having all of your mental faculties, having all of your physical energies, and you're not guaranteed anything. So, I mean, I feel a real obligation, not just to myself, but anyone who ever invested anything in me ever, to just do the most that I can. Like when I wake up in the morning, it's like it's a blessing. It's not an obligation.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. To engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than a serious or practical purpose. This is how the Oxford Dictionary dryly defines play. And while play is by definition to be enjoyed, its presence in all of our lives, or the lack of it, is serious business.
Dieter and Natsine Steklis have spent more than 20 years working with mountain gorillas in Rwanda, and they've discovered something unexpected.
What struck us is not only how playful the youngsters are, that's quite common amongst many animals, certainly common amongst non-human primates, humans of course, but we were also struck that some of the adults were playing with the youngsters. And so that really caught our interest.
And that's a pretty amazing sight to see a massive silverback, 400-pound big guy, playing with a little juvenile or playing with youngsters and laughing, laughing out loud, because you can hear their laughter and it sounds kind of like
a horse laughter.
Yeah, and they're having a great time. And to see these massive silverbacks who are really trying to just get a siesta, right, and sleep, but then interacting with these youngsters and play, wrestle, and we started thinking, even though at that point we were researching other things, we kept observing that, and we said, what might be the function of that? What is the advantage of that? And that just led us down this road of what's the story of play.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Everybody getting into the act. See, play is contagious.
Yeah.
Scientists are starting to piece together that story. They're finding that play is critical for growing healthy bodies, brains, and behavior.
Yes.
I know.
Wonderful, look at that. One of the really cool things about play is that it has its own sort of communicative signals that basically signal to the other that, hey, I'm just playing, you know, like that. But all species have these signals. So they learn to read that and they say, okay, I'm going to regulate my emotions here so that I don't get too excited about this because it's not serious.
Learning that emotional regulation and that control of your emotions is an important part of our social world. And that happens during play.
For humans, living in a social world can complicate play too. Anthropologist Abby Lobenberg studies how cultural ideas about play affect what people do for fun.
Play is very much considered to be the province of children, I think, in the United States. I don't think that many adults see themselves as playful. We don't even give ourselves the chance to, you know, gossip at the water cooler because we're busy sending emails to people in the same room as us. And I think that that's a problem.
Did you get today's? I sent it.
A culture that values work over play will crowd play out, even for children.
There have been studies done of groups in Melanesia and parts of Africa where children are just left to play. They just do their thing, and adults don't really pay them too much attention. I think Americans are quite neurotic about exactly what their children are doing at any given moment, being monitored, and they need to know all the time whether this is good or bad, or, you know, is something, you know, productive or unproductive, or educational or not educational. You have this trend towards removal of time from recess and removal of play time from the curriculum in favor of more time in the classroom, in favor of more time preparing for testing. And I think that this is one of the biggest challenges that the United States faces today in terms of how children are being institutionalized and how they're being restricted in what they're allowed to do.
Yes, hi, this is for Bob
Retired
Rice,
teacher and play activist Steve Gall takes this trend seriously.
What I've seen is a change of culture. I mean, we see child obesity, we see juvenile diabetes, we see high blood pressure with these kids, and I'm concerned they're not getting enough exercise. There have been studies where kids have been lacking vitamin D because they don't go outside to get sun. Okay, all right, arms out. Remember,
Gall has been lobbying for years to pass a bill protecting play in schools. He succeeded on the local level with the Tucson Unified School District, but his efforts on the state level have failed so far. Losing play could leave kids without the learning and coping skills they need.
There was a study in 2009, so it's quite an old study already, which looked at kindergarten classrooms. It was in the journal Pediatrics, and they looked at kindergarten classrooms where children had less time to play at recess, and kindergarten classrooms where they had more time to play. And the children who have more time to play were more academically successful.
Okay, let's go.
In the human research, we're finding out more and more now, and there's been a fair amount of press about this. People have written books about it recently, etc., that it's this unstructured play, even in school, that we actually need more of. And it's in some sense, perhaps the thing that school administrators and parents are most terrified of, right? Because it's that unstructured play that can, of course, get out of hand, right? They're worried about kids.
Someone ends up crying, right?
Somebody, or getting injured,
right?
And we've sort of...
And that's precisely what's been restricted the most, is that unstructured play, when that is the most important in terms of learning to navigate the social world.
But play isn't just about growing up right. It can also help us heal when things go wrong.
I'm Juliette Fortino, and I'm a child and family therapist, and I specialize in play therapy. Play therapy is the use of toys and play media to help mostly kids, but adults too, work through whatever it is their story is, whatever is their trauma, and to help them process through that. So tell me a little bit about what's going on. I was introduced to play therapy when I was still in graduate school. I went to a play therapy training with the founder of modern play therapy theory as it is. And And I walked away from that training thinking he was a whack job. I have no other words for that. He sits in a room and he reflects what the clients are doing and saying. And I kept thinking to myself, there's no possible way this could work. How could this possibly be effective? And the first child client I had, I was like, oh, I get it.
Now, Fortino relies on play to help people overcome trauma and begin again.
I've got 13-year-olds that I play peekaboo with because they never had a parent who nurtured them or who gave them what we take for granted when we have babies, and playing peekaboo and playing hide and seek and this little piggy kinds of stuff. And so going back to some of those things, as silly as it sounds, gives them back those pieces that they were missing.
The Stecklesses say play research has a long way to go. They're pouring through decades of data, hoping to find a new piece in the puzzle of play.
Solitary play, like on monkey bars, look at them.
Mm-hmm. You can actually look back through the records and say, well, who was the most playful and who were the play partners? And you can ask very specific questions about what happens down the line as these animals get older. Do they live longer lives? Are they healthier individuals?
Are they more successful?
Are they more successful?
He's ready to rest.
Let's answer this question about what the benefits, the particular benefits might be over the long term for these individuals, you say. And that's what needs to be done with human studies.
Yeah, it hasn't been.
Touchdown!
Our next story features Democrats and Republicans working together to pave a road toward a more prosperous future for Southern Arizona. Remember those days? You will in this episode of From the Vault.
Every politician you could think of was there, and even some you couldn't. And everybody agreed that the man who had worked the longest and hardest for Kolb Road was Congressman Morris Udall.
I thought somehow, Barry, in the light of my long and unsuccessful political career, that it was probably highly appropriate that you and I should be dedicating a dead-end street down here.
Senator Barry Goldwater also had a big role in making Kolb Road reality.
This is one of the most historic moments of Tucson's life, because I think it marks the beginning of a road plan that you're going to have to expand.
If you buck Barry Goldwater and the Armed Services Committee, you don't get these airplanes and some of these things, and the Air Force is very sensitive to those types of equipment. And I'm glad that they agree that our national defense is absolutely necessary, and that's why one of the reasons we have this beautiful road, or will have it shortly.
This has really been a come-from-behind, last-minute victory that was really retrieved from the jaws of defeat by a congressional delegation, Senator Goldwater, Senator DeConcini, Congressman Udall.
Local officials were overjoyed. The mayor called it the single most important groundbreaking in Tucson in 11 years. The chairman of the Board of Supervisors could hardly believe his eyes.
It's a day that I didn't think I'd see as long as I was in public office. This has started quite a while back. It took the cooperation of a great many people, and it goes back a long ways.
It has been a complete team effort, if I may say so, including not only the county and the city, but the United States Air Force and Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in an integral cooperative program.
The speech-making over, everybody who was anybody had a chance to shovel a bit of dirt, that is, for the new Kolb Road extension. Now the hard work begins. Kolb Road will extend from Irvington south through the Air Force Base and eventually connect with Interstate 10 southeast of town. Eventually, the road from Irvington north to 22nd Street will be widened. The Kolb Road corridor will cost $50 million. It will be the single largest transportation project in Tucson since I-10 was built in 1956.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. See you next week.